In the corridors of power in Kyiv, a political storm is gathering, one that threatens to reshape not only Ukraine's domestic landscape, but also its very strategy for survival. Shocking revelations from European Union officials paint a picture of a government under siege from within. As an internal corruption scandal weakens President Volodymyr Zelensky's hand and appears to be pushing him inexorably towards peace negotiations he once vehemently rejected. The United States, seeing a window of opportunity, is reportedly pressing its advantage, urging a settlement to the protracted conflict. This unfolding drama reveals a complex and perilous interplay between Ukraine's desperate fight against corruption, its long-held aspirations for European Union membership, and the grim realities of negotiating an end to a brutal war. The information compiled from a network of reliable diplomatic and intelligence sources indicates that a corruption scandal involving figures intimately connected to President Zelensky is precipitating a dual crisis, one that directly impacts both Ukraine's foreign policy and its precarious journey towards European integration. This is not merely a domestic issue, it's a geopolitical fulcrum upon which the future of the conflict may pivot. The epicenter of this political earthquake is a recent and shocking corruption scandal that allegedly involves businessman Timur Mindich, a figure described as a close business associate of President Zelensky himself. This is not a minor case of graft. The scale of the alleged bribery and corruption scheme is staggering, estimated to be in the region of $100 million. The scheme reportedly targeted the country's critical energy sector, with a specific focus on the state-owned nuclear power company, Energoatom, a cornerstone of Ukraine's national infrastructure and energy independence. The fallout from these allegations has been swift and severe, triggering a wave of high-profile personnel changes that have shaken the very foundations of the Zelensky administration. The most significant of these was the departure of the president's chief of staff, Andriy Yermak, a powerful and influential figure who resigned after Ukraine's anti-corruption agencies conducted a search of his home. In a telling development, Mr. Mindich, the central figure in the allegations, is reported to have fled Ukraine just before the Anti-Corruption Bureau's search was initiated, a move that has only intensified public and international scrutiny. For President Zelensky, who rose to power on a powerful wave of anti-establishment sentiment and a resolute promise to eradicate the endemic corruption that has long plagued Ukraine, this scandal represents a devastating blow to his personal and political reputation. The very platform upon which his presidency was built now appears to be crumbling beneath him, creating a crisis of credibility at the most critical juncture in his nation's modern history. This internal turmoil has not gone unnoticed in Washington. According to detailed accounts from European Union officials privy to the sensitive discussions, the domestic crisis sparked by the corruption scandal has significantly weakened President Zelensky's negotiating position in recent high-stakes talks with the United States. Observers in Brussels and other European capitals believe that Kyiv's dramatic shift in posture, moving from an outright rejection of any negotiations with Moscow to a position of seriously considering them, is a direct consequence of this internal pressure. The Zelensky government, once projecting an image of unshakable resolve, now finds itself in a compromised position, grappling with a loss of political capital both at home and abroad. It is within this context of vulnerability that the United States has reportedly intensified its diplomatic push. During recent discussions held in Berlin, the American delegation is said to have presented Kyiv with a significant offer: robust security guarantees modeled on NATO's Article 5, the collective defense clause that forms the bedrock of the transatlantic alliance. However, this offer came with a firm and explicit expectation: President Zelensky must accept Washington's proposed terms for a peace settlement. Sources close to the negotiations suggest that a framework for a peace agreement is surprisingly advanced, with approximately 90% of the terms having been provisionally agreed upon, yet the remaining 10% contains the most contentious and emotionally charged issues. At the heart of the stalemate are the non-negotiable demands from Moscow concerning territorial concessions. This includes the formal acceptance by Ukraine of Russian control over territories currently under its occupation, a concession that would be politically toxic for any Ukrainian leader. A particularly thorny point of contention is the fate of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, Europe's largest, which has been under Russian military control since the early stages of the invasion. Russia is demanding its permanent transfer, a condition Kyiv finds wholly unacceptable. The pressure from the American side is palpable. U.S. negotiators have reportedly delivered a stark warning to their Ukrainian counterparts, stating that the proposal of Article 5-style security guarantees will not be on the table forever. This ultimatum places President Zelensky in an almost impossible position, forced to weigh the promise of future security against the immediate and painful sacrifice of sovereign territory. Compounding this immense pressure is Ukraine's parallel and equally arduous quest for accession to the European Union. This strategic objective, a cornerstone of Zelensky's foreign policy and a symbol of the country's definitive break from its Soviet past, has a potential, albeit ambitious, timeline for early 2027. However, Brussels has been unequivocal. The path to EU membership is paved with reform, and the fight against corruption remains an indispensable prerequisite. The recent scandal has cast a long shadow over these aspirations, prompting stern warnings from European leaders. EU Justice Commissioner Michael McGrath, in a recent statement, cautioned Ukraine that it must demonstrate the existence of a robust and effective anti-corruption system. He stressed that the country must prove its capacity to handle high-profile cases of corruption transparently and decisively if it genuinely wishes to join the bloc. In a clear and direct message, McGrath emphasized that Kyiv will not receive special treatment and that the standards for accession are non-negotiable. This firm stance from the EU adds another layer of complexity to Zelensky's predicament, as the very scandal weakening his hand in peace talks also jeopardizes his country's European future. Meanwhile, in Moscow, the Kremlin is observing these developments with keen interest. Russian President Vladimir Putin, in recent public remarks, has reaffirmed his unwavering position. Despite the U.S.-led efforts to broker a peace deal, Putin has made it clear that Russia's core demands, particularly regarding territory, remain unchanged. He issued a chilling ultimatum of his own, stressing that if the other side refuses substantive negotiations, Russia will not hesitate to achieve its objectives through military means. Vowing to liberate its historical territories, this hardline stance from Putin effectively closes the door on any settlement that does not involve significant Ukrainian concessions, further tightening the diplomatic vice on President Zelensky. The Russian leader's pronouncement serves as a stark reminder of the military reality on the ground and the catastrophic alternative to a negotiated peace. However flawed that peace might be, in the face of this multifaceted crisis, the Zelensky administration has been forced to take decisive action to reassure a skeptical domestic audience and its increasingly concerned international allies. The government has launched a visible and concerted effort to demonstrate its commitment to tackling corruption at the highest levels. In a public address, President Zelensky voiced his support for the investigative efforts of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, NABU, and the Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor, SOF-SAPO, the very agencies investigating the scandal. He declared that for those found guilty of corruption, sanctions are inevitable, a clear attempt to signal that no one is above the law. Following this declaration, he called for, and subsequently received, the resignations of both the Minister of Justice and the Minister of Energy, two key cabinet positions, in a move designed to show accountability. Furthermore, in a direct response to the allegations surrounding Energoatom, Ukrainian government has re-established the Independent Government Oversight Council for the state-owned enterprise and has launched a comprehensive top-to-bottom audit of its operations. While these steps are significant, many observers, both within Ukraine and in Western capitals, remain cautious. The prevailing sentiment is that these efforts, while welcome, must be part of a broader systemic reform rather than a piecemeal reaction to a specific crisis. The long-term challenge for President Zelensky will be to convince his partners that these actions represent a genuine and irreversible commitment to the rule of law, a task that is essential to restoring the full confidence of the Western allies who are underwriting his country's survival. The road ahead for Ukraine is fraught with peril, a treacherous path that winds through the battlefields of the Donbass, the courtrooms of Kyiv, and the negotiating tables of world capitals. The outcome remains uncertain, but one thing is clear. The fight against corruption has become as critical to Ukraine's future as the fight on the front lines.